Kia ora, e te iwi. No mai haere mai, ko Wayne Masters taku ingoa. Good evening to everybody from around the Mutu, and welcome to our Rugby Smart webinar series. We're up to episode 3, and thank you for joining us this evening. Our theme tonight is creating great environments. I'm Wayne Masters. I work in game development with New Zealand Rugby, and I'll be your facilitator this evening. We've got a great lineup of panelists who are experts tonight, and I've got a lot of experience and expertise in the area of creating great environments. But that's only one string to their bow. And so first I'd like to welcome and introduce our panelists. And I'd first like to welcome Vania Wolfgramm. Vania, I'm privileged to work with at New Zealand Rugby. She's a game development manager and is our lead for girls and women's rugby. Talofa, Lava, Vania, and tell us a bit more about yourself.
Oh, talofa, malole. Thank you for the intro, Wayne. Really awesome to be on this webinar tonight and just to share a little bit about what we're doing in and around environments. A little bit about myself, married, just kidding. Married to my beautiful husband, Stephen Wolfgramm, who's actually at training tonight. And we've got 2 children, a 4-year-old boy, Sterling, and a 2-year-old daughter. And they keep us busy. So it's awesome to be here. Like Wayne said, currently in the community rugby team, specifically in game development and working around trying to provide more development and build capability in around women's rugby. So that's in and around coaching, refereeing, managers and administration. So really awesome to be on here for our Talanoa tonight. Thanks, Wayne.
Mai taku mātou Vans. Michael Marnewick coming into us from Auckland this evening, somewhere in Auckland. You might be able to tell us specifically where. It's a big place up there. Michael's also works in our game development team here at New Zealand Rugby. He's our lead for our secondary school space, really important space in rugby. I'm really looking forward to his insights this evening. I know that he's coached overseas and in New Zealand at lots of different levels. Got a teaching background. Michael, welcome. Tell us more about yourself.
Kia ora whānau. Thanks, Wayne, for that introduction. Yeah, Michael Marnewick. I've had the privilege of working for New Zealand Rugby for a couple of years now in the teenage and school space. Married with 3 kids and currently giving back to my local high school, coaching a bit of rugby there. So getting some real good insights and learnings out of that. Looking forward to discussing the environment piece tonight, and happy to be amongst such esteemed people. Thanks, Wayne.
Kia ora, Michael. Last but certainly not least, Jimmy Sinclair, my old mate from down in the deep south in Waipunamu in Christchurch. Jimmy, I know you're the head of coach development with Canterbury, and we know what a factory Canterbury is for producing great environments and great coaches and players. I took great delight in watching you a year or 2 ago with our under-18 Wahine team that won the gold medal at the Junior Olympics in Argentina. So that's a little bit about yourself. You tell us a bit more, Jimmy.
Kia ora, it's whānau. Thanks for having me on the call, Wayne. Looking forward to working with Mike and Barnes for sure, and looking forward to working with the community tonight, getting your questions coming at us. A bit about myself. I've got 2 dogs, 2 lovely border collies. Got a lovely couple that inspired me to coach women's rugby, and she's still actively involved in women's rugby, Maddie Suri. Lucky enough to work as a coach educator at Canberra Rugby alongside 2 great men, Kahu Keary and Blair Baxter, who teach me stuff on a daily basis. And some great people have worked in that environment as well that we still learn off today around what they did in their space. Wayne Masters being one of them, of course. So, real grateful to be here tonight. Keen as to kind of get as much feedback from the audience and you know, whatever knowledge we can share or ideas, concepts we can share, then awesome.
Tēnā koe, Jimmy. Hey, look, our format for tonight, whānau, as you know, there's a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and also a chat feature. So if you've got questions that you want to discuss with the panel, then please type those in. And likewise, if you've got some gold nuggets that you want to share with everybody around creating great environments, by all means, please tell us those those as well in the spirit of ARCL and reciprocal learning. We've all got something to learn here this evening. We're going to go for up to an hour, and in that time, hopefully we'll get to answer your questions and hear from our panelists and go away with some things that we can really action with our players, if we're managers, if we're involved with club or college rugby, if we're coaches or in other parts of the game. So what does a great environment look like, sound like, and feel like, and does it even really matter? So a bit of a challenging question to begin with. So I'm going to put it out to our panel, and I think we're going to start with Michael, I think. So Michael, tell us, why are these environments important? Why is a great environment important?
Thanks, Wayne. Yeah, I suppose to quote a fellow colleague of mine, the knowledge is in the room. So, happy to tap into Van's and Jimmy's experience as well. But something that we've come up with as a game development team is, in terms of the environment piece, a lot of teenagers in particular told us that the reason they come back to the game is to play with their mates, or really to be under a coach that they have a lot of respect and time for. So the actual technical, tactical detail maybe isn't as important as the environment that we operate in for teenagers, again, in particular. So within our team, we look at an acronym which spells out FABS. It's FABS. F being fun, the A being achievable, the B standing for belonging, which is something I think is crucial in what we're going to be talking about tonight. And then the S is safe. I won't go into too much detail around that because I think we'll tap into that throughout the next hour. But yeah, it's sort of a true north, if I can call it that. It's an opportunity for us to, as coaches and as administrators, walk off the field afterwards and ask ourselves, did we hold ourselves to account by creating an environment which was fun, achievable? Our participants felt like they belonged, and it was safe for them as well.
I might jump in on that, Mike, if that's okay, Wayne. Just in around, 2 points that Mike sort of pointed out was our kids are wanting to play with their mates, and also a big factor around coaching. It's the same sort of research and data that's coming through for our women and our girls. They just want to play with their mates also, and being a real key factor in around our coaching is also can turn our people away. If it's not so good coaching or the quality of coaching, and so that really adds to the environment piece. If we don't have that right, our women and girls can have a really bad experience, and we may not get them back. So is it important? It's absolutely important to have a FABS environment that we, I suppose, are accommodating for our participants, being our players. And then in my angle, trying to grow women in coaching and refereeing is also making sure that they are the key people that we are servicing as well, serving in terms of tautua. So I thought I'll just add that, Mike. So good points in around the FABS environment, mate.
Thanks,
awesome. Thanks, Vans. Leading through service. I love it. Jimmy, anything to add to that? I think our crew's told us the importance, but anything you want to add to
that? No, I definitely... The FABS model is an awesome model around a simple way to understand how important it is. I definitely think if we were to ask kids, what was their best memory of a year, it wouldn't be maybe so much around winning a big game, but it would be around environmental things. Like, one thing we know is when you ask kids, like, what do they enjoy like social functions with their team. Or a random stat that recently showed up is kids enjoy water breaks at training was one of the top 10 things they enjoy about training. So if we look at that from a bigger picture, that's telling us they actually just like to have a drinks break and throw a bit of banter towards their teammates, maybe squirt them with a water bottle. So if we take that as an environmental piece, that's, if that's top 10 of their list of what they remember about the year or what they enjoy, that tells us that the actual on-grass stuff becomes just a small part of it. Although it's the vehicle, it's the stuff that surrounds it, which is the environment, that actually is what the kids remember about their season. So it's just an important, but the FABS model is an awesome one to delve into.
Hey, awesome. Hey, thank you, panel, for letting us know what the important, why it's important to create these great environments. I must show you sort of how much free time I have, but if you Google rugby plus drills into Google, then the return you get is about 24.5 million returns. So, the point being that the technical, tactical stuff, the X's and O's, that's out there. That's in the public domain. And we can all get access to that stuff. And we're going to give the people listening this evening a reminder on where they can get some great extra information at the end of this evening. But if we can nail that environment piece and have our players engaged, safe, wanting to come back next year, then that's success. And that's a lot more challenging than we probably think, than just having a list of drills and skills and drills that we can roll out at training. Hey, thank you for that. If we're to use this FABS model and work across this thing called fun, and you talked about how our players, Jimmy, have talked about how they, even water breaks are important to them, and it's probably because of that banter, that korero that they get to have with their mates. If we're talking about fun, what can fun look like? What, as coaches, as influencers, our players, what can that look like in our environments? Vans or Mike, do you want to take us with any of that?
Yeah, well, it's funny, we just delivered not that long ago a foundation level 1 coaching course, and that was real specific focus on women and girls. It didn't not mean that we were not allowing our men to come in, but it was a real total focus on our women and girls. We actually had players in the room, and so what better way than to ask our actual players, what does fun look like and sound like for them, as opposed to asking our coaches. Now, the girls, we're hoping also that they will be our coaches of the future, and that they can coach our Ripper rugby teams and so forth, or whatever they want to do, right? But interesting, I think I asked the question around, are you a coach that goes out there and actually makes your kids, under 5s, under 7s, run Broncos for warm-ups? Or, there are a few that put their hand up, but they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's not. So let's ask the participants. So our girls actually say, fun is actually a bit of singing, there's music playing, there's a lot of laughter. So it's quite different, but it's also important to actually ask our players and ask our women and girls, what does fun look like for you? Because it is quite different for what potentially our coaches think it is, and even what our boys and girls may think fun is. So I love that they sort of said a whole lot of TikToks and that sort of stuff. So I'm in that. But I wonder if is it the same for our teenage boys, Mike? I might just throw that one to you. And Jimmy?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. Fun, I think probably a couple of years ago, fun would have been considered quite a dirty word. And it shouldn't be seen like that. You've touched on it already, Vance, but fun, you can see it, you can hear it, and you can feel it, if something is fun. And at a training, it's obvious to see when participants are actually enjoying themselves. And it doesn't mean to say that everything has to be game on game on game without a lot of structure and actual maybe technical coaching around it. But it does mean that we have the opportunity where, as Jimmy's already said, the water break, give the kids 2 or 3 minutes to have a laugh, have a joke around, and come back in. I think, respectfully, with our girls piece, I think that's something that the girls do far better than the boys. You only have to go to a tournament like a Condors or any sort of sevens tournament where there's music playing. It's usually coming out of the girls' camps. They know how to create that environment, whereas the boys tend to be a little bit more serious around that. But certainly there are ways of doing that better at a training.
Jimmy?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, like, when we talk about fun, how much opportunity do we allow for, like, kids to express themselves in training and play? So, often, like tonight, I was out at a rugby club doing some work with some under 8s and under 10s. And if I watched all those kids at the start of that session, they're not doing anything structured. They're just trying to tackle each other, chase each other around the rugby posts, running around the club rooms on the deck and stuff, just like. But that's fun to them, right? And if we ask, like, why do people get active in the first place? It is for a sense of enjoyment, because we feel so good when we play and when we move. So, if I was to put that in a boy sense, how much opportunities does your training allow for unstructured opportunities and whether, like Mike said, that could be using games as a learning opportunity. But how do you start your training? Does it start with a serious warm-up, or does it start with a bit of a fun game to capture the kids' attention, hear some laughter, connect with their buddies? So there's simple things you can do to just allow for more opportunity to have a laugh and have some fun, which is actually going to provide a better connection for your team.
Hey, awesome. Thank you, Jimmy. And I've heard you talk about the analogy you know, if you throw a rugby ball out into the schoolyard at break time or whatever, the students, the boys and girls will soon come up with some sort of game to play, you know, probably quite unstructured, you know, self-officiated. And so, yeah, how do we create those situations, those at trainings where they get that free play, that chance? Excellent. Hey, I think we'll keep following our FABS model if we're happy with that. And thanks for kicking us off with that, Michael. So F's for fun and A is for achievement. So we might go straight back to you, Michael. Tell us about, you know, what does achievement mean for you? And you're in the coaching space. I think you're coaching age group at the moment. So tell us a bit about achievement.
Yeah, look, I think often it's important that the goals and aspirations perhaps of coaches and their players align a little bit better. And so what I'm finding with the achievement piece, particularly this year, working with teenage boys, is what they wanted to achieve at the start of the year maybe wasn't quite the same as what I would have wanted to achieve as a coach. And so for me, it was probably actually having that conversation with the participants first and realizing that they were happy with certain achievements and I was happy with another group of achievements, and we kind of met in the middle. But in terms of using that word achievement or achievable at a training session, it's got to be small micro skills, and it's got to be based around actually assessing it at the end of a training and being able to walk away and have the participants go, yep, we reached the goals that we set for ourselves at the start of a training. It's the old cliche of how do we eat an elephant? You know, it's one bite at a time, one training at a time. It's not about we are here today, we're trying to win a championship in 6 months' time. It's really just breaking it down into more sort of bite-sized chunks. That's really it in a nutshell for me. But Vance, Jimmy?
Yeah, no, I just, I think because when you're speaking of women and girls, it's so massive, and it's so broad, because we are now finding there are more and more girls only teams, and which never used to happen, you know, at least 5 or even 6, 7, 8 years ago. And I have seen the power of female only or girls only teams, because they're playing, you know, with their own friends, and they're not struggling with power when they're with the boys. Or, you know, historically we've seen a group of, let's say there's, you know, a team and there's 10 boys and there's 2 girls. You're either hardly ever going to get the ball, or you have to be the best girl on the team to get the ball, you know. So in terms of a sense of achievement, it's how do you know if they're achieving some goals, or how do you even know if those girls, I guess I'm just talking from a, you know, are we making sure that we are looking after our girls in those environments? And then you go to the club space and it's like this. I mean, I don't know if you can see that, you know. So you can go to club rugby where you can have a 16-year-old girl that's coming to play club rugby, and then you've got a black fern. And so the achievement there is going to be a wide range. And then that's quite heavy on a coach, depending on the quality, but not, I shouldn't say quality of coach, or the coach that is of that team, to make sure that they are achieving, that their goals are being met at those different levels. So it's really quite complex. And I think if you look at the different age groups, you know, you're gonna be able to find that. And I think so from a coaching point of view, this is why it's really important, because one, we don't have enough coaches alone, let alone, you know, just in rugby in general, and referees. And then in women's rugby, we don't have enough coaches or referees. We don't have enough female coaches. So I guess that's the angle that I come in when we're trying to provide environments that are safe enough for our women to come through to even attend a Rugby Smart or a Small Blacks. That is 100% achievement from my point of view. And, you know, I'll probably talk a little bit to that a little bit later on. But again, you know, I guess from a, and Jimmy, you probably can attest this, you know, coaching girls, it's such a huge range, but it's still equally important, you know, because if they're not, you know, girls ask so many questions, and if they're not finding that they're not achieving anything, you're not really hitting the FABS model, you know, you're going to lose some of that motivation, I guess, being a part of a team. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And even on that, Barnes, that's why it's so important to, you know, we talk about it, but how do we get to know the person before the player? So then we actually have an understanding of, what do they want to get out of the season, what's their potential, and it is challenging. On that achieve, one thing we know, fun and socialising with your mates is top 2, and then generally underneath that we hear people say that they want to learn stuff within the season. So a challenge I'd put to coaches in, you don't have to be the fountain of knowledge as a coach. Like if you can't tell, you might not be able to tell on screen, but I'm not a front row expert. So when I've coached in the past, I'm not going to try and fake it when for the forwards, say we need a little bit extra work. I'm going to go ring someone up that I know and be like, mate, can you come to my training and be a different voice, provide a bit more detail around scrum time, lineouts, because I'm not the expert in that. And players generally actually get a greater respect for you when you reach out, show a bit of vulnerability to help, because it's all linking to, you're trying to make them the best player they can be at whatever level. So, and an extra set of hands, extra set of eyes is really great for helping create a good environment, getting external people sometimes in to come in and add value where they can.
100%.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. The way you were hoeing down that pasta early on before we came live, you looked like you were working your way up into the 1, 2, or 3 jersey. Hey, Jimmy, I know we've had discussions before about measuring success and what success might look like, apart from the trophies that are in the, at the front of the school or in the club rooms. What are some other ways we can measure success with our players?
Yeah, especially at any level, to be fair. Like we can measure success around 2 ways, like an outcome, which is, we want to win every game. Like you say, we want to win the trophies. Or we can look at a process. And Mike talked about this a little bit, So every player, it might be as simple as like, I can't pass off. We hear players say a lot, I can't pass off my left side, but I can pass off my right. So what if a goal was that everyone could pass the same distance off their left and their right sides and by left and right side by the end of the season? So that's a process goal, going back to the achieve, that's going to make kids feel awesome at the end of the year, because you're working with every individual to help improve their skill level. And same with tackling. Like, what if every kid is real confident at tackling on their right shoulder, but not their left? So what if we increase tackle confidence? And you could easily get the kids, rank out of 10 at the start of the season. How confident are you to tackle on your left shoulder or your non-dominant shoulder? Okay, well, let's set a goal as a team. We want everyone to feel, if we're currently at a 7, we want everyone to feel at a 9 or a 10 by the end of the season. And it actually helps shape a lot of the language you use as a coach too, around it's process driven. So team, we all said at the start of the season, we wanted to get better at tackle confidence. So tonight we're going to do some tackle activities, rather than language around, hey, this week the team's really big, so if we want to beat them, we've got to be good at tackling. So you can, if you set these little goals, it can really help shape the way you talk to the players, which goes back to creating a bit of a safe environment. And then again, they're learning stuff because you've created an environment that's driven around, achieving little small steps along the way.
Hey, look, thanks, Jimmy, and yeah, good to hear us all talking that achievement can be a lot more than just winning, and hearing people talk about individual achievement versus team achievement, recognizing the process, recognizing the effort over the outcomes. Some great things there. We're just going to tie-ho just a little bit on our FABS framework. We've got a really cool question, a challenging question, but a question from one of our attendees. So if we just go to the Q&A there, I'll read it out. So our listener coach is an under-7 Ripper team, and likes the look of this FABS framework, which is great to hear. And one of the challenges they're having, is keeping most of the team safe. And there's a couple of players who sometimes they say, I quote, are fiery or disruptive. As a coach, how can I correct inappropriate behaviour while keeping it fun and belonging? I like that caveat of keeping it fun and belonging. I'll turn it over to the panel. I know we've got parents sitting on our panel who might be able to give us some parenting advice as well. So I'll hand it over to Barnes and Michael and Jimmy. Please chime in at any time.
Those under 7s.
Under 7s in our Ripper space, yeah.
Oh, mate, it's a hard one. It's a hard one because what a parent may see or a coach may see as disruptive, our kids may not think that they're being disruptive, right? So I think one thing I will throw out there is I might have to lean on some of our parents, in and around, made at this point of time, is it okay if we have our parents come in, you know, like maybe through, it might be that water bottle water break thing, you know, have a word with our parents and then bring them all back. But yeah, it's a tough one, because I think my son sits in that category. and then you're like, well, he that's his way of what he sees as fun, as being, you know, like he's kind of a little tough, and he's you know, playing with his mates. But I do have to have that word with him when we're at trainings, because I'm not the coach, but I can totally see the coaches are like, you know, that's my piece of advice from a parent's point of view. I would lean on our parents who are hopefully proactive within our coaching area. So I might throw it to the boys here.
I'll chime in quickly. I think, you know, first of all, to David, coaching under sevens, massive respect, because man, that's like herding cats. So, you know, Vance has already touched on using other parents. If they are standing there at a training, perhaps on the sidelines, just watching, get them involved. You know, it's a matter of actually them acting as an assistant to the assistant, if that's the case. The other thing I would say is, you know, we should allow kids to be kids, and sometimes they are disruptive, sometimes they can be fiery. They're like us, you know, they've had a bad day at school, or they've been told off at school, and coming to a rugby training is an opportunity for them to actually express themselves. So it's not necessarily naughty, and I hope it's not naughty behavior, but perhaps using them as well as the example. You know, if you are demonstrating a catch pass activity or running activity, for example, utilizing those players to demonstrate so that everyone else can watch, and perhaps maybe just a word every now and then, just telling them, you know, actually trying to build them up and say that they are being looked at by some of the other players and what they can add value to the team. But I think, Jimmy, you've got some gold surely in this space as well, mate.
You guys have nailed it, and yeah, awesome work, champion. Coaching under sevens, you are the man, and the fact that you're asking a question because you've noticed that there's something that needs to be addressed is even better. That you're curious as a coach to obviously figure out what you can do, which is awesome. Look, if I was to throw out anything out there, I say this to every coach, and I still have to say it to myself every day, like, all behavior is communication. So if a kid acts in a certain way and you think it's disruptive or it's really positive, they are trying to tell you something. So it could be like Mike says, I had a terrible day at school, or coach, I just want your attention because, you know, I haven't had any attention all day, or whatever it is, they're trying to tell something to you. So how can we make training so, like Mike says, that they get opportunity to get noticed, or try and figure out what they're trying to tell you? So it might be that they're disengaged in training, and that's why they get a bit fiery, because maybe they just want a bit of rough play and stuff. So how can we allow time for that at the start of training? Or they might be the tagger in the games to start with all the time, but you might give them a subtle challenge, like, you can only rip with your left hand here, Johnny, because we know, you know, or you know the player a lot more than, or you'll know the child a lot better than us. But they're trying to tell us something when kids are disruptive or misbehaving. There's always something underneath that. So, you know, and like Van says, try and talk to the parents, get to know the kid a little bit better. How's he going at school? Blah 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 blah. But mate, you're the man. Keep it up, champion. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, great question, and some real good gold there, panel. Thank you. So the A's for achievement and B's for belonging. I'm going to throw straight to Michael Marnewick. Tell us about belonging, and particularly within the space that you're tasked with, Michael, in our teen and secondary school space.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. You know, the belonging piece, I think, particularly in the teenage space, is probably the most important letter of our acronym. Teenagers have a tough time feeling like anyone really understands what they're going through. We've all been teenagers. We've all been there. We know what it feels like. And so the belonging piece is huge. And often, as Jimmy's already touched on, getting to know the person before the player, that's valuable stuff. That's gold. What I would say as well is we have a model now that's shifted a little bit away from having a lot of our teaching staff as coaches. So we have a number of coaches at secondary schools, at colleges, at intermediates, who are perhaps parents or perhaps old boys, old girls of the school. And so sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect in terms of, you know, who the teenagers are, who the team is. So the first thing I would suggest to external coaches of teenagers is perhaps sit down with someone in the sports department at the school, or any teacher for that matter, and get a gauge of what the school actually stands for. What is the ethos of the school? How do they view themselves? What is important to them? What are some of their major values, so that that person can carry that over into their trainings? And once you have the teenagers there, it's about creating that environment where they feel like they can say and do and act in a way that makes them feel like they are belonging to someone, to something. Sorry. Something I was told by a school teacher years ago was, never let the actions of a teenage boy surprise you. And it's something that stuck with me for years, because sometimes these young men, they play up and they act out and stuff like that, and you can get angry, you can get upset about it. But I come back to that quote, and it's gold at times like that, because you sometimes just have to put it into perspective. And I think it's important to remember as well that a lot of our youth in this country, unfortunately, for some of them, the 60 minutes or the 90 minutes that you get for a Tuesday, Thursday training is the best part of their week. So sympathizing and having a little bit of empathy around that, and creating a place where, as Jimmy's already said as well, you can be a little bit vulnerable to allow them to come in, because if you go 50, they'll come 50 as well. And that what Jimmy's already touched on with getting to know the person rather than the player is huge.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Mike around how important that the belonging part of environments, because it can affect and have impact on the individual and teams. And so I guess from two lenses, one is from a female point of view, when you have a lot of the time, because it's still new, right? So women's rugby, girls rugby is still in the developmental phase, if we are being really honest. And so it's really important that we are welcoming, that we are really intentional about welcoming our women and our girls into teams, but also into the spaces of our rugby environments, our clubs. And what I mean by that is that it has to be personalized. So, like that you actually take the time to say hello, that you introduce yourselves, that they are not standing there or they're on their own. Because whether we like it or not, the reality of our, I suppose, some of our rugby clubs and some of our rugby environments are still intimidating for our women and our girls. So that I would say that. And also from a Pacifica point of view, is really trying to be intentional with that. If we look at our playing population, we have a huge playing population that represents Pacifica and Māori. Are those some considerations that our coaches, that our clubs, that our, I suppose our boards have thought about? How are we making them feel that they belong? So it could be easy, like just some practical tips. There could be some symbols that they can relate to that are in the club rooms, or some rituals that your players could actually bring into the team culture. And so, I mean, if we've got another hour, we could be here talking about a sense of belonging or in and around team culture. But I will say that it is really important. The other thing, I guess, sorry guys, like from a female point of view, a sense of belonging is having a woman lead in some of our rugby spaces. And that's an instant connection for a female. Because one, it's really important for our women to be leading in rugby spaces. Why? Because it's such a male, heavy male dominated area, and that's okay. But we need to have our women in those spaces, but it's important for our women to see that. It's also important for our men to see women lead and co-lead with our men. So, thanks for having me on this panel, because I love that. Working with Mike Marnewick and Wayne, we've been able to co-lead and role model that. So I think, being able to provide those safe spaces for our women to be able to do that is important. But yeah, Jimmy, if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, that's awesome. And the belonging piece is massive. Like, that's almost not even in team sports, just in, think if you work in an office or if you're a tradesman or whatever, you want to be showing that you're appreciated and that you're an important part of the group that you work with. So a real simple thing, this coach is awesome at this, and at times I'm like, mate, are you gonna coach some rugby soon or what? But like he sets a goal that every training he has to like fist pump or high five every player, but he sets boundaries around. He's not allowed, well, for himself, he tries not to go to we tend to, as coaches, be drawn towards the more talented players at any grade because they're the more influential players, because they're a little bit better on the field, they understand the game a bit more, so they're easier to talk to about rugby. But he sets himself a challenge that the first 3 questions he asks any player when he gives them that fist pump at the start of training can't be anything to do with rugby. So it has to be around, how was your day today? What do you got planned for the weekend outside of rugby? And then eventually, though, they start to actually, get to know stuff about this player. Like, how's old Dennis, your old black lab? How's he getting on, champ? Or, so we start actually building that relationship that creates that my coach actually cares about who I am, as well as making me a better rugby player, but they're actually passionate about me as a person. And, that's a real simple way to kind of describe, or a real simple way to get to know all your players, that actually makes them feel that they're all important to you as the coach, because the coach is actually the role model of the environment, that the players look up to the coach. And sometimes we forget, we take it for advantage, or we forget it.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, panel. What I'm hearing here is that old saying, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So we've had another question come in around, what are some examples that we can do to create a sense of belonging with our players within our environments? And Jimmy just gave a good one there about it, getting to know our players in our environment, past the playing stage, knowing more about them. We got any other things that are sort of examples, hands-on examples? I'm thinking sort of rituals that we develop within our teams and other off-field things. Anything people want to share?
Yeah, well, I can speak to that quickly, Wayne. Particularly in the secondary school space, if you consider that a lot of our young men and women are at high school for 5 years of their lives, which is longer than intermediate school. It's about the same time as primary school, but most people don't remember primary school that well. And so secondary school's sport in general has a huge following in terms of the ritualistic type behavior and belonging to the school crest. I think what a lot of good coaches, and one coach that I'm thinking of in particular, has done is actually tapping into what the school crest means. And he was new to the school. It's a big co-ed school. And he asked the question around, what does their crest actually mean? And none of the boys could tell him what it stood for. So they really took a sort of a journey into what is their school there for? What does it stand for? What does rugby mean in their community? What is it represented outside of the school gates? And then they sort of built that as part of their journey in terms of getting the boys to buy into that. I suppose it's not really theming, but it's creating a sense that every day, these boys and these girls have walked through the school gates for the last 3, 4, 5 years and not really known what the school crest on their chest has actually meant. So creating a sense of idea and a sense of purpose that's greater than just the sport that you play, and actually piecing that together, I think this coach in particular has done a huge job around creating that culture of belonging with them.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, panel.
I was going to bring up another example.
Jump in with another example, please, Jimmy.
A real simple one. Luckily enough, I had the pleasure once to coach a few times with Victoria Grant, who's if you don't know, she's a outstanding female, advocating, doing some great things. She did a really cool thing. Her first interaction with some players was she just wanted to know what their superpower was in life, so really using language that's about, what are you really good at? As New Zealanders, as a general rule of thumb, we are terrible at, hiding ourselves, with high regard and something that we're good at. So she asked every player to give her a superpower, part of a conversation, and then she gave them a little bit of a necklace that had the superpower written on the back of it, and they had to bring that little symbol. And the symbol could be anything, man. It could be a laminated piece of paper but every player had to bring their superpower to training every week, and then part of the language that Victoria would use, or tours really well, would always be encouraging girls that you've all got a superpower because you've told me what it is, and you've all got something to add to this environment because everyone's superpower is different. And, if we talk about any age group that's relevant, if I ask a 5-year-old, who's your favorite superhero, you know, they're going to give you whoever it is, and you can say, well, what's the power you like about them the most? And it's the same for any person, you know, and it just highlights that we're all important here and we all contribute in different ways. So that's a real simple thing you can do to kind of make people feel as though they actually contribute to the environment, regardless of who you are.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that, Jimmy, and the rest of the panel. We've just got not so much a question, but a comment from one of our listeners. Says, love the commentary on belonging from a female and Pacifica lens. Believe that if there is intentionality, and love that word, there is intentionality behind it, and the club embraces it, it can only be great moving forward for the rugby ecosystem. So I think that's a nice statement just to finish off our bit of a critical on belonging. So thank you, Moana, for contributing that. So S is for safety. And we're going to look at safety in a sort of a bit of a broader context, because it means a lot more than you know, RICE and looking after other soft tissue injuries, although those are very important too. So I'm going to go straight to Vania on this. So Vania, talk to us about safety in some areas that we probably don't think or be as intentional as we can with it.
Yeah, no, awesome. So obviously our Rugby Smarts and our Small Blacks is our mandatory courses that we deliver every year, right? And it's around making sure that our players are safe. And it's a good thing that our coaches and referees are in attendance, because it's good to know what is safe if you're there on the field and so forth. What we have been doing this year is weaving in our environments piece, because as you've mentioned, Wayne, the safety part of the FABS model is so important. So when we look, I guess, you know, when we're providing environments, we have to look whether it's gender safe. You know, we spoke about that a little bit earlier. Is it culturally safe for our participants? And then we look at a whole range of things. And honestly, there's so many different layers that we start going into, and that could be around religion, sexuality, being emotionally safe. I think one thing that I suppose that we are starting to look at is making sure that one, our female are safe, but also that our men that are coaching our women and girls are also safe. How do we make sure that our men are safe in our game too? But just in terms of some real practical things, and we sort of created a type 5 female considerations, which has been shared with our provincial unions, but sometimes is not just front of mind for our men. So if we look at our facilities, and it's not an easy thing to fix, but it is something for us to be aware of. And if we're aware of it, then we can sort of plan, you know. So again, our toilets, do we even have toilets available for our women and girls? And do they even have toilet paper? That's another thing, which is, you know, like I was talking to some of the boys, they were like, shucks, man, I never even thought about that. And I say, you know, that's okay. But when your club rooms are running, or our clubs are running female tournaments or tournaments for both girls and boys, you have to make sure that we are looking after our girls in those spaces, right? The other thing I think we are not really aware of from a rugby point of view is the actual distance. So if we look at where we're training, our girls are, you know, so 5 o'clock, 5:30, the sun's actually, you know, it's getting a bit dark, and sometimes our kids are training maybe on the furthest field. Or even if we look at our women's, you know, a lot of our women are actually training far away, but how far is it from the toilets? Have we considered that? Because that will actually impact on your training. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I think if we're looking at from a club point of view, are we actually considering where our women are training? Because the distance of our toilets, actually, are they even open on a Saturday morning? So many times I've, you know, rocked up and it's not open. Hello. And then, you know, like some other things are like our car parks. Are they lit? It's not safe for our kids, you know, if they're not lit. So, I mean, you know, again, we could, you know, I'm just touching on a few bits and pieces here, but it's still equally important. And I will say this, what is safe for our women is safe for our kids. And, you know, I think we still need to delve into a whole lot of things, but these are just some of our key big rocks that we can talk about tonight. So, yeah, thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, I suppose you know, in the teenage space, the teenage male is a pretty tough nut to crack. But in terms of physical, emotional safety, they're very similar to what Vance has already touched on. I find just from experience that, you know, again, Jimmy's touched on this, that vulnerability piece is massive, and quite often with teenage boys, it's about making them understand that they are in a safe space. If you are an external coach, perhaps you don't have that relationship where a young man might be able to confidently say something that is a private matter or something that they may be struggling with on the field or off the field. And so it may be a matter of actually getting them to a teacher who may be a support person that they can speak to. Another example of safety that I'm finding is that quite often we have to be quite direct with our timings, because we have boys that will have to jump on a bus to get home. And so if we finish trainings 5, 10, 15 minutes late, it's guaranteed that some of those boys may actually miss their transport home, which puts them at risk and is unsafe. So at, you know, finishing time, we are on the clock, and boys are in the huddle, quick chat, and we are gone. So I think coaches need to be aware of that as well at all levels. Sometimes we find ourselves talking a little bit too much, and you know, the time keeps ticking, and there are repercussions for that safety-wise as well.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Jimmy.
Yeah, good. Yeah, great stuff. And I would, coaching in the female space, I'd agree with everything Barnes has said there 100% around. You know, sometimes it's just in the environment we have, whether it's club, school, whatever, you know, are we actually catering for everyone here, for everyone. So that's some great stuff that Barnes has brought up. So thanks for that. And I guess as a coach around the safety side is, you know, we want kids or players in general to feel safe, that they can tell their coach, you know, basically anything. And then actually on the other side of that is coaches, if we notice personality change, or a kid shows up a couple of times late to a training, whatever, you know, sometimes our mindset is, hey, remember team, the standards are we show up. But, you know, we don't know what's going on in that child's life or that teenager's life or even that adult's life, you know. So, and it goes back to having that ability to connect with the player. And actually, if you show them that you care for them as a person before the player, they'll feel a lot safer to actually say, shivers, hey, coach, man. Geez, you know, and COVID was a great lesson for that, right? We learned so much about with what happened with COVID, people losing their jobs and saying to their coach, look, I can't play. And I don't actually, geez, life actually is so uncertain at the moment. My anxiety levels are through the roof, and I need someone to talk to. And it's, again, going back to the coach, you don't have to be the fountain of knowledge. If it's the same as if a kid breaks their leg, you know, you send them to the doctor. If someone's out of personality, your first corner call, mate, how's everything going outside of life, outside of rugby? And if they give you a bit of an answer that doesn't seem so great, be like, oh, well, mate, like I'm always, you know, offer the service. I'm always here if you want to chat, man. And if you don't want to chat, I can put you in touch with someone that can help you out. Or it's just important. Sometimes I think we overlook that. We overlook that, the mental side of emotional safety, because we're so worried about the physical side of safety. And they both work hand in hand, but you know, it's important we understand that they're both just as important as each other.
Hey, excellent. Thank you, Jimmy. And yeah, safe clubs, safe kids. There's lots of good resources that are available on rugbytoolbox.co.nz. And remembering in regards to child protection, which is an important part of safety, that all clubs have a child protection advisor, someone that you can go to get further help, further support, as Jimmy said, and also your provincial union has people that can help you with that as well. So thanks for that team. We're coming towards 8:30, and so just a couple of little things I'm going to throw out to the panel, and it's really a couple of little gold nuggets, I suppose, that I've heard all of you at different times, or some, you know, different people that I'm looking at on the screen talk about at different times. So, Jimmy, I'm going to go to you first. Tell me about time on task and your Disneyland analogy, because I really like that.
Yeah, look, I can't steal this quote, but I'll certainly share it with you. Like all good marketers, we never come up with the original idea, but Ken Martell, who's a great man who works in USA Ice Hockey, reframed essentially the whole junior framework for ice hockey, and the numbers skyrocketed through the roof within America. But there's a great saying, you know, like if you imagine this, people out there listening, if you went to Disneyland with your family, your kids, and you ask the kids, what do you want to do when you get there, kids? Do you want to stand in lines, or do you want to ride the rides? I guarantee my mortgage on it that none of them will say they want to stand in the lines. They want to ride the rides. And if we put that in a rugby context, what they want to do when they get to training, and like Wayne said at the start, if all training, if you threw a rugby ball out at the start of training and you had 10 kids standing around, they'd all start playing a game. They wouldn't set up some cones and then stand behind the cone and wait their turn to do a drill. Not saying drills are bad. There's a time and place, you know, we've got to get better, sharpen our skills. I totally agree with that. But how do you balance that out so you can have games within the training with a little bit of drills? And look, the gold standard we say around if you're going to use drills because they have relevance, you know, try and have 2 grids set up, and that's where we can use the parents, you know. So it might be a tackle drill. You know, I show the kids what it looks like. Then I say to a dad or a mum, hey, look, can you run the same activity just right next to me? And then we might only have 3 kids in a line rather than having 6. You know, so it means we're getting time on task, which means kids are learning more, they're getting more feedback, and they're having more fun, right? Because they're getting opportunities to practice the skill that we're working on in training.
Awesome. Thank you, Jimmy. Many of our people on the Zoom tonight would be aware of the balance is better concepts that not only our sport but other sports are adopting. Michael Marnewick, tell me about balance is better.
Yeah, so balance is better, or balance is better is an initiative that was formulated by Sport NZ, and it's nothing new. It's not really groundbreaking in any way. It basically means that we should allow kids to participate in as many sports as they physically can. And I suppose what that also means is knowing that some of your participants are participating in a number of other sports. As an example, one of my players at the school that I'm currently working with, he actually misses our trainings on a Tuesday because he plays basketball, and so I only get to see him for a Thursday training before a Saturday game. And I suppose to start off the season, I was a little bit annoyed that he was missing the odd Tuesday training, and then it became every Tuesday. And when I actually had the discussion with him, he said, well, you know, I play basketball on a Tuesday, and he plays his matches then. And so immediately for me, it's that sort of moment of clarity where you think you can't be an advocate for balance is better if you don't actually allow this person to participate in basketball. And actually, dare I say it, when he's playing basketball, he's probably learning spatial awareness, eye-hand coordination. He's learning to communicate, and it's aerobic sport. So if anything, he's probably coming to me on a Thursday having done as much as he probably would have at a Tuesday training. So I think it's just, you know, sometimes we probably need to have a little bit of awareness around some of our participants, particularly our female athletes, and I'll get Vance to talk to this, but what we find with male teenagers is that they'll tell you that they're a cricketer or a rugby player or a basketballer, whereas the girls tend to play in the wintertime hockey, football, basketball, netball, and rugby. You know, they'll live and breathe sport, and quite often our talented athletes tend to be the same kids, so they do play a number of different codes. So it's just an awareness as coaches that it's not about fighting other sports, it's just about allowing kids to go and express themselves in different codes, but giving them the opportunity in rugby to make sure that hopefully they keep coming back to our game as well. Barnes?
Yeah, like, oh my goodness. So, you know, I think we're lucky in the sense that in the secondary school space, we have our girls play midweek, right? So I haven't come across any provincial unions that have our secondary school girls playing at club level on a Saturday. So, you know, you're having girls that are able to play on a midweek, maybe it's a Monday or Wednesday, then it allows them to play other sports throughout the week and the weekend. Hopefully that's, I don't know, I mean, like, I'm hopeful that it stays a little bit longer that way, so that our girls, because our girls are generally really good at everything, you know, the girls that are playing our sport anyway. And then there will be a time where they're going to have to make a decision, you know, that this sport is the sport that they're going to play, whether we like it or not, you know, it may not be rugby and so forth. But you know, and I suppose in our so women's rugby, more often I see our probably club rugby, our women play rugby on a Saturday and then they back up playing league on a Sunday, and usually they're our best athletes, and I don't know how they can deal with the impact, because that's like, you know, 4 trainings a week, you do the maths, but it's like a back-to-back. Anyway, I don't have any answers to that. I'm just sort of saying, you know, like that is still a thing, but I will come probably again from a cultural point of view, where our girls who are Pacific Islanders, and I guess it's a cultural awareness. You may not find, you may find, and it's, I was just down in Manawatu, and they ran a women's series, women in sports series, 3 Mondays in a row. One of the ladies who are part of the audience actually came up to me and said, I have a 17-year-old girl who's awesome at rugby. She plays volleyball and netball. Her dad, who happens to be Samoan, her dad has just told her that she cannot play rugby anymore / or sport. And I think for us, I think I just want to encourage that that is still a cultural thing for our female, that they, for our, I guess traditionally in Pacific cultures, our women don't belong in sports. So, you know, having to navigate those worlds is a real thing. And I thought, like, even up till last week before going down to Manawatu, I thought, shucks, I see more and more of our Tongan girls playing, which is awesome because they're so good at it. I see more and more of our girls, you know, coming in from different cultures. Well, actually, the reality hit me straight in the face when I attended, and it was just the other week. So it's not, yeah. And then having presented, like being able to present with Irani or Savia Tama, Irani Clark around our cultural competency, there is a general desire from our communities, our game developers, our key stakeholders in our game, to understand what that means. And I mean, we could be here another, you know, hour or so. I think for me, it's asking the right questions, and having the empathy to and the desire to actually understand that. So again, coming back to Jimmy, his point in around knowing your athletes or knowing your people more before, and then you can play and then you can plan for them. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, person first. I've gone all over like this, but I you know, it's still, again, for us, it's quite important. So.
Hey, thank you, Vans. We love your passion and keep it up. But yeah, what I'm hearing is the more we can understand the people we're trying to build this environment with, the more we can cater them. We've got time for one last comment, and I'm going to turn it over to Michael Marnewick to just help answer a question that we've had come in there around mental health first aid programs for our coaches. Do you want to take that, Michael?
Yeah, so, you know, our teachers who are coaches, obviously they're teachers first, and I know in a lot of secondary schools and primary intermediate schools now, there is a lot of time and effort being invested into educating teachers and upskilling teachers around support for anyone who may be feeling fatigued or suffering with mental health issues. In terms of our rugby coaches, there are some great resources in terms of the Head First campaign, which is a New Zealand rugby campaign. So headfirst.co.nz, and on that website, you know, people can take a look at a couple of self-tests. If you're, you know, possibly thinking of someone else, then there's some avenues you can go down there, and it's a great tool because it has a coaching aspect as well. It's a great resource, and we often at Rugby Smarts and Small Wags courses will make mention of that. It's a little bit like rugbytoolbox.co.nz, but it offers a slightly different view, and yeah, just a bit more support if people want to maybe go through a little bit more of a private channel first before having an open conversation with anyone.
Hey, thank you, Michael. And a nice segue. Keep tuned for follow-up webinars, and I know one of them is going to be that's being planned is around injury prevention and well-being, and utilising some of those resources, those online resources around the Head First that you were talking about, Michael. So to our listeners this evening, keep an eye out for those in the future. Whānau, that's us for this evening. A big thank you to our panelists, but even more importantly, a big thank you to everybody out there looking after our tamariki, our rangatahi, our players, and keep up the good work. Hope the season's going well. On behalf of New Zealand Rugby, we wish you all the best. We thank you for giving us some of your time this evening. Look for follow-up resources on, as Michael said, www.rugbytoolbox.co.nz, and wishing you all a pleasant evening. Por Māori.